Hello, hi, my name's Sarah Green, coordinator of Hillingdon Green Party, and I'm a candidate for Ickenham and South Ruislip ward in this local election. Is this my 3 minutes, Mary?
Yes, please.
Okay, right, thank you. The Green Party doesn't have any seats on the current administration in Hillingdon. And we have seen across the country more and more Green representatives getting elected. And anywhere where even a single Green representative gets elected, we change the dynamic and we change the conversation. And we try and work with everyone, but we insist that the environment becomes a crucial part of any subject that comes up. At the moment, we have this really urgent need to act, and yet action is not happening. It's not happening nearly fast enough at a local level, nor at a national level or global level. And this is what we're up against. Think global, but act local. And the thing is, we have to act. So we are really, really asking for your votes, in particular in the north of the borough, where we've put in our main work over the last 5 or 6 years. Now, the reason we've concentrated on Harefield and South Harefield is because there is terrible devastation going on there. Most of it, well, some of it people can see if you've been to Harefield recently, but there's also the unseen. What is happening is 3 inner source protection zones for public water, that's our daily tap water in Hillingdon. It's being damaged. At the moment, we are importing water. We're importing water 10 million litres a day from Perivale, and they're building a new pipeline for another 10 million litres a day from Cop Fosters. Our main water pumping station is closed, they say temporarily due to HS2 pollution. But this is against the local plan. It's against the local interests, and the council need to stand up. If I get elected for Ickenham and South Harefield, I will ask for the local plan, the Environmental Impact Policy 11, which is protection of local groundwater, to be enacted. There has been no risk assessment which shows that the groundwater on which we depend is being protected throughout construction and the operation of the railway line. Now, I think everyone here would agree that fast trains cannot prioritise drinking water. It's madness. It's not just HS2, it's not just drinking water, it's the idea that vital environmental elements are overlooked for the sake of the economy. Without a livable planet, without air we can breathe, water we can drink, the ability to grow food, without pollinators, without the biodiversity, we can't survive. And we have to show that we are protecting these vital things locally. That's why I ask everyone listening, please vote Green, especially in Harefield Village and Ickenham and South Harefield. But all over, it will help to put the environment at the centre of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Stuart Mathers to do 3 minutes on their positioning?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to Friends of the Earth for organising this, particularly Debbie and Tony. It's very much appreciated. My name is Stuart Mathers. I'm the Deputy Leader of Hillingdon Labour Group, speaking to you on behalf of Hillingdon Labour. Hillingdon Labour is ready to govern locally. There are 2 parties currently in power within the council. Hillingdon Conservatives have been asleep at the helm. They are the administration that is unambitious. They're the administration who do not want to act on the planet, do not want to act in improving people's lives, and they are not building the better borough that we need. And over the last 4 years, this Labour group and hopefully a Labour Council in May on the 5th or 6th even, we will have the opportunity to go beyond keeping the Conservatives to account, but governing for people, working with people and helping to improve on the local level and the borough-wide level. It was Hillingdon Labour that pushed the Conservative administration to have targets around a whole borough carbon zero approach, rather than just isolating it to council services, ignoring predominantly some of the procured ones. It was Hillingdon Labour that strengthened our commitments to make sure that we do not let the biggest thing facing our lives at the moment, that threat of climate change, ruin our entire planet by inaction, by falling asleep at the wheel. Our policies are designed to build a better borough. And over the last 18 months, when restrictions from the pandemic started to ease, Hillingdon Labour have been out knocking thousands of doors, speaking to many residents. We've been from Harefield to Heathrow Villages, from Useley to Yedding. We've been everywhere to make sure we're listening to residents, to make sure we're working with residents, to make sure residents' voices are heard. And the Conservative administration over the last 20 years have not been listening. And I can often feel in myself, as many do, that it feels like they just don't care. Our commitments are ambitious. We want to drive further in tackling climate change. We've helped to secure the council putting a strategy in place that starts to divest from the fossil fuel making companies and others that damage our environment. We've been pushing for increased biodiversity, for support for bee populations and other essential aspects of our environment that may not be the things that stop climate change, but actually the council has a role in to promote nature and the environment and biodiversity to help our entire environmental surroundings, but also to place in the minds of the hearts of residents how important our environment is and the impact it has on our lives. We as Hillingdon Labour want to protect planet and people, and in the current cost of living crisis, which the Conservative government and Conservatives locally do not want to act on, people are struggling. People are using our food banks increasingly, and we want to see a voluntary sector and a broader economy that supports households and families in those moments of crisis, but also into good, vibrant, including green jobs. We want to support on a local level to make sure that the Heathrow expansion that is being pushed for doesn't happen, that HS2 that is damaging swathes of countryside as well as significant parts of Hillingdon does not happen. And we want to ensure that at the heart of all that we do, we are working with people to have a fair and equitable borough. We see such injustice in our borough, and that needs tackling. We will also protect Greenbelt and covenants on land.
Thank you, Stuart. I'd like to now turn to Liberal Democrat, Alex Cunliffe.
Hi, thank you to everyone for having me this evening. I've been a candidate in local elections for the past 15 years. I'm a Liberal Democrat, so haven't yet been elected. Don't think that surprises many people, but I do this because I am interested in supporting the local community from wherever I live. So it's not just politics. I'm involved in education, local sports, and mental health issues, both in the community and in my business sector. And I think that is the way that I and the local Liberal Democrats approach environmental policies. We have been asked, all the panelists, to deal with 5 asks that have been put forward, and subject to one thing, which I'm going to say first of all. I think we all, well, I certainly agree with them, and the Liberal Democrats have put forward in policy for COP26 pretty much those 5 asks. I think there's, from my perspective, there's still a certain amount of controversy around using transport hubs for the delivery of the many packages that we get now. That was one of the 5 asks. It's a nuanced issue. I know it's unusual to hear politicians talk in nuance, but I think that there still remains evidence about evidence to come about the best way of dealing with excessive transportation of individual packages around to our doors. But in terms of the way forward in the immediate future, the Liberal Democrats have committed to upgrading insulation in all existing homes by 2030 and requiring new homes to be eco-friendly. This involves the use of renewable materials, including things like wool as a rather than artificial materials in insulation. We've committed to increasing areas for safe walking, cycling, and increasing public transport, particularly routes to schools, so that our school children can live and breathe in areas which have much less pollution than they do now. We've committed to doubling the green areas across the UK. We are blessed in Hillingdon with a great number of green areas, but that doesn't extend to the whole of Hillingdon, and particularly the south of the borough around Heathrow and those areas. They don't have the same green spaces that those of us who live further north do have. But they do have the canals, the waterways that can be cleaned up and produced so that we can everybody can enjoy those.
Thank you. Thanks very much. You'll notice that the Conservatives have chosen not to put forward a spokesperson this evening. We have a message from Conservative leader, Councillor Ian Edwards, who wrote, "Thank you for your invitation, but we shall not be attending. We are focusing on doorstep conversations and will reach many more households this way than through set piece hustings events." Okay, so as Alex has just mentioned, each candidate or each panelist has been asked to consider the 5 asks, and you've outlined the majority of them there. So you'll see these on the web pages, but just to briefly outline that they are about improving provision for walking, cycling, and the use of public transport, the enhancement of existing green spaces, an acceleration of the process of retrofitting buildings, the creation of green jobs to reduce emissions, and the engagement of local communities with climate change impacts, prioritising the most vulnerable. Okay, so now we're going to move over to your questions that you've put forward to us this evening. And they've been usefully put together in thematic areas by Tony. So then each of these, our spokespeople, will have 2 minutes to respond to each of these questions. And I'm hoping that they'll all keep to time there. So let's just start with the first of these, which usefully starts under the thematic concern of climate action. A question from John, who lives in Eastcote. He says, "How will your party ensure that the council's climate action plan becomes central to everything the council does, and it's continually improved in its ambition and reach?" Can I ask Stuart to address that question first, please, just to mix it up?
Thank you, Chair. And please do keep me to time. My clock is in a slightly different location. So it was the Labour Party that pushed the Conservatives to go further when it came to our climate emergency declaration. For me, it's about making sure that we see it as a dynamic piece of work, that in every single department across the council, we are driving to reduce carbon. We are making sure that the decisions we make now do not put us into a place where we are just offsetting in the future carbon by throwing money here, there and everywhere, or accepting that companies within the borough can just carbon offset. We want to be reducing carbon. And for me, that means that we need to be making those decisions now. So for example, electric vehicles, the current administration will only wait until certain technologies come in before they invest in them to use them. It's the Hillingdon Labour Group that are pushing to use them earlier. Even if the technology isn't 100%, it's better than the diesel alternatives. And we need to make sure we do get best value for the public, but we also need to be more ambitious and start implementing and innovating in this area now and set the example to local employers and support residents to do their part too.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to go next? I think you're on mute, Sarah.
Thank you. We have to look at where roles are actually missing. One of the 5 asks was about green spaces, biodiversity, improving it. In fact, it's going the exact opposite way. There is no one in the council that takes responsibility of biodiversity. Nobody in the green spaces or in planning or in the environmental department. So all the people that are trying to report anything happening to habitats being lost, destroyed, endangered species being wiped away, it's not being recorded anywhere. How can the council improve on biodiversity if they don't know what's actually happening? So we have to look at the gaps in the system, why the system isn't working, and allow make people responsible, but allow the public to help. So one thing about biodiversity there, it would be so simple to have someone responsible to inputting information from the conservation groups, that there were many in Hillingdon, and from the public, who are really key to take a role, but that isn't happening. Again, so it's just building on what's there, putting something in place that isn't there, but it's also looking at, you know, things like the recycling, seeing why we're not really driving ahead to making more and more recycling from the public. And I think a lot of that is better communication with the public, and for the public to have more trust and faith that what they're actually putting out is actually being recycled. They want more information. We all want more information so we can help to improve the system.
Thank you. And Alex.
Thank you. I think the important thing is, well, the answer is in the question that how do we do it? We have to make it the central point. It should lead from everything. For me, the important thing is to use the purchase power the council has to drive innovative technologies, to enable the community then to piggyback on those technologies, on the innovations that are brought into the borough. For one of those, for instance, could be improving the energy efficiency of vast areas of the public ownership, buildings, vehicles. This is the first fuel. What we do with preserving and creating efficiency in energy will be reflected then in a reduction in the carbon production and of course in our bills. Energy efficiency reduces long-term taxes and is something that can be felt locally as well as nationally and internationally. Production and implementation of electrical outlets for charging vehicles, as has been done in Bristol and elsewhere, so that that it makes it easier for people to get out and about in cheaper, smaller, electrically powered vehicles, reducing congestion. And again, going back to that local pollution for our kids, reducing the pollution in the air.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question, which links a little bit, I think, so I'm going to just move to that one and then move back to some of the earlier questions, is a question from John of Ruislip. Although it's addressed to the Green Party, I think given what you've all said so far, it's relevant for all of you to be able to have a response to this particular question. It says the manufacture of electric vehicles would mean we create vehicles that are not carbon neutral and would require intense mining activity in the world for the materials needed to build the vehicles. Do you advocate using hydrogen and methane to create transport systems that are carbon neutral? For instance, engineers have demonstrated that current gas boilers can run as on a 25% hydrogen mix. We need to produce hydrogen that has 11% loss of energy to produce hydrogen and oxygen. But I think the earlier parts of those questions would be really useful to get your views on. Can we start this time with Sarah, as it was indeed directed to
Thank you. Thank you. That's brilliant. I'm having a hard time with very long questions, remembering all the bits,
Yes,
to be
yes.
honest. But I think that the key thing with vehicles, we're all moving around too much, and we're just taking it for granted. We can leap in a car, whether it's an electric car or whatever, and just go and get something. We've got to actually move around less. We've got to plan our lives differently and make an awful lot of more of our journeys local and active travel, you know, walking, cycling and public transport. So it's not that, you know, every car can't be replaced by an electric car, because it's another way to kill the planet. We have to car share, we have to help each other, and we have to do a hell of a lot more walking. You know, I've brought up my children without a car. I've never had a car, and people think that's impossible, but actually it's very simple. You don't need a car. We're in this habit of car, and I know that cars are wonderful. However, we don't need to all have a car. We can share cars, and we don't need to use them nearly so much. I think that's the key. That's the key to all of this, really. It's the same with our electricity and our heating. Heating's a different question, but sometimes just turn it all off. You know, there was this wonderful thing for Earth Day. Just have 10 minutes, just turn your whole electric off, and you feel so much better. We've got to reduce, and we've got to get a different mindset. We don't need all those car journeys. We need some of them.
Thank you, Sarah. So can we have Alex next? And I just remind of the second part of this question, which is about a question around using hydrogen and methane as an alternative. I took it from Sarah's response that the reduce, and it reduces the primary point you're trying to make in relation to this issue of alternative vehicles. Alex.
Yes, I don't know. Sorry, John, if you saw me smile when the question came up, I wasn't smiling to indicate disagreement with the question. It's a thing that irritates me whenever I hear people talking about the carbon neutrality of electric vehicles. They are better than polluting carbon internal combustion engines, but they are very far from carbon neutral. The mining of rare earth metals in China predominantly, and elsewhere in the developing world, moves the pollution to the rivers and earth of those countries. But there's also a great deal of energy used in those sectors as well. The carbon is still there. Of course, there's carbon in the production of the electricity that then goes into the batteries that we're using. Again, the energy market in the UK is far from being carbon neutral or renewable. I think the question falls into its own trap in talking about hydrogen being carbon neutral. Again, we don't have free-flowing sources of hydrogen. That's a product of an electrical of a reaction to produce the hydrogen. It then has to be compressed. It's not as energy dense as other fuels, and it's not as easy to transmit as electricity. I think I spoke earlier on about innovation in battery use creation is the way to go, and I've run out of time, but I could carry on for ages on that topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Stuart.
Thank you. I think there is agreement here. We you know, in order to really grasp the climate challenge, we all need to be doing a lot of different actions, and a lot of people doing imperfect action is better than one person doing perfect action. And a lot of the solutions are very much like that. You know, the production sometimes outweighs the running of or the operational costs, and it's about having that that dynamic aspect. And for me, in terms of the council, because we have limited control if elected as councillors, it's about making sure there's the expertise there to see how we can innovate, and getting the evidence to show the public the value of things, maybe like hydrogen, and also maybe more pertinently at the moment to convince people of switching from diesel or petrol to electric sources or others. For me, it's very much around how do we equip our public and educate our public awareness, including in that those of the elected members, our public awareness of these things. It gets very complicated and people zone out. So it's making everything as easy as possible for all of us residents. It's about making things as understandable, although these are very complex issues. But I think there needs to be a council that's open to these ideas, that doesn't have its head in the sand about climate change or transport innovation or investment, but actually is willing to take and grasp the challenge of climate change. And Hillingdon Labour is ready for that. Thank
you very much. I've got a couple of next questions which are linked, I think, quite closely to what you've both been pointing towards in terms of this question of being in agreement. So I'd like to ask the question from Judith of Ruislip. Are you able to put party politics to one side and work collaboratively to help deliver the 5 asks, or anything else that would help Hillingdon address the climate and nature emergencies? So yes, who's going to go first this time? Maybe Alex?
I don't know if anybody's ever going to answer no to that sort of question. But of course, if there's anything, I think 2 things that I would say you can guarantee a politician will say, we're going to work together, and we'll actually work together on it. It's looking after our kids, children, and the environment. The environment, it's necessary, it's vital, it starts local and it grows from there, because it's a local and national and a global issue. We can't do it alone, and there may not be agreement on every single part of what we do, but we have to work together and to drive this forward. The question asks, are we going to be able to put party politics aside? I think as party politics to work together, yes. I'm not going to put party politics aside now. I'm going to say that we have conspicuously seen a lack of cooperation and a lack of teamwork from the Conservative majority in this council on these matters, with local groups and other local parties being excluded from the decision making and the jobs. And I think that is what needs to change for the benefit of the whole community.
Thank you. Stuart.
Yes, thank you. I agree, obviously, with that sentiment. I think for me, my disappointment, I'm coming to the end of my first term as an elected member, has just been the lack of cooperation from this administration. We did manage it with strengthening recently the climate change declaration. So I'm not going to stand here and say there wasn't cooperation in trying to put something that we could agree on, because we recognise the importance of climate change. So there's a part of our record of saying that Labour works with the Conservatives to strengthen climate change. We had to push that initiative ourselves, but once we were there, we worked collaboratively. And I would love to have gone further. And if in control in May, we will go further. I'm very proud of our manifesto. It's been built by the voices of Hillingdon residents. And so therefore there is a mandate within that, if elected, to really work on the environment, the ambitious environmental and local issues that face us, ambitious solutions to those issues that face us. So I will always work with others in order to benefit Hillingdon residents.
Thank you, Stuart. And Sarah.
Oh, Green Party will work with anyone who's genuinely trying to do something to help the environment. The problem with Hillingdon at the moment is we are getting I have to go back to the water. Our water is being destroyed on a daily basis, and not one of the other parties has wanted to know the facts and wanted to join in with us and wanted to even call for an inquiry or call for a halt in the works until we can sort this out. This is an environmental emergency going on now. I want support. I want to collaboratively do it. You know, it's not just the people in power. What we found when we've been really trying to stand up for this issue is the people in power have said one thing. They've said they care about the environment. They've said they don't want HS2. And in fact, they've done the opposite. They've prosecuted people like myself who's been standing up and trying to tell the truth. You know, we've got the truth is what matters. And there has to be roots for the truth. I mean, this is why this husting is brilliant. You know, some people may not know what's happening to the water, but now they can't say they don't know. But it's about collaboration, it's about action, it's about willingness to take on the tricky subjects that are actually happening on our doorstep. And yes, the Green Party will work with everyone who wants to do what we would say is the right thing: save our water, improve our air quality, save our biodiversity, save our wetlands, you know, stop the destruction.
Thank you, Sarah. And on this question of people being informed, we'll have a question from Bill from Light Ruislip. Please, can we have a room at the Civic Centre as a public climate change information room? Do you think that's something that you can achieve? Can we start with Stuart?
Thank you, Chair. I think for me, it's not just about the Civic Centre. It's about, we have library networks across the whole of the borough. So how do we embed into each and every space, each and every council asset, that reminder, but also the action needed around climate change and environmental issues? Part of our manifesto is about bringing in co-located services. So making sure that you've got health alongside libraries, and you might have leisure activities. There's no reason why green spaces, environmental education, we already see, you know, recycling bags and things given out through the libraries, but making those spaces and places, children's centres, youth centres, libraries, council offices, something that the community can access. And I mean, putting climate change awareness and other actions from the plan, and hopefully an advanced plan, into those spaces, for me makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Sarah?
Oh, sorry. It's not about the council building. It's about having a space. What people need is a space. It'd be great to have a space in a council building. It'd be great to have a space in a shop that's not being used. It'd be great to have a space where people can run it. It shouldn't be the council running it. You know, the council have an awful lot of power. Give the people a bit of space. People need to be able to get together, come up with these ideas, actually have workshops, have sustainability, you know, be in control of something. When Ruislip had the sustainability shop, even for a few months, it made such a difference. It was so dynamic. It wasn't run by the council. The council helped by allowing a space to be given for a certain space of time, and then it was taken away. What we need is a space that's ongoing, that people can use for the most important subject facing all of us: climate action, and what we can do here and now in the borough. Thank
you, Sarah. And Alex?
I apologise if I've misunderstood the question, but I can't see that would be top of my agenda. The problem with things like dedicated spaces for subjects is that you get people coming who already know. You get people coming who are already of the same viewpoint. You get people, you're preaching to the choir. If this might be a nice to have, but I want to be concentrating on getting the message on climate change through to those people for whom it doesn't mean very much, for people who think it's an issue for somewhere else that's not for them. So my priorities would be driving forward the council as setting an example so that everyone can see that that climate change is an issue that's central to all of our lives, and that it is something that we can all do something about. So as I say, I would go to something like that. I go to museums. I go to all sorts of places to find out about interesting issues. But I can't see that it would be my first port of call in trying to add my energy to resolving this issue.
Okay, thank you. A question from Valerie from Ruislip. What do you propose for producing sustainable energy in Hillingdon for Hillingdon residents' benefit? And can I ask Sarah to address that first?
Yes, we don't make any energy in Hillingdon. We use a lot of energy in Hillingdon. I think it would be possible. There are rivers right next to where I am. There's a little slipstream, could easily make energy. We could have windmills if they weren't prohibited because of their visual appearance. And again, it's about allowing people to find solutions. I think the people that make their own energy here in Hillingdon are the boaters. I lived on a boat for quite a long time, and you actually have to know how much energy you're using and how much you can make from solar or whichever way you choose to make it. So yes, this ties into the last question. What would be really good is if there was a room available at the council which could show people about energy usage and insulation. The best way is the same as the first question: reduce our energy use and then look if it is possible for local solutions. And the obvious ones are water and wind.
Thank you. Alex.
Again, yes, there are a number of ways in which we can increase the efficiency of our energy use. We don't make huge amounts of energy in Hillingdon. We have individuals contributing to the national grid through the use of solar power, but significant contributions to energy require even renewable energy, access to considerable renewable resources. So wind turbines are not the best in built up areas for generating large amounts of energy. What I would say is that we can look at investing in improved energy transmission systems. So we had a question about hydrogen. Hydrogen can translate energy in a lossless way from an energy producing area to an energy consumption area. And we can do something about that in local government. We can do things about energy storage, because again, the problems with renewable energy, or one of the problems with renewable energy, is we don't get solar energy at night. We don't get wind energy when it's a nice day. So it doesn't come when we need it. Increasing our capabilities to store that energy locally and then reduce transmission loss thereafter would be beneficial for local people and reduce pollution from the energy production nationally.
Thank you. Stuart?
I think there's two strands for me. One is about how do we build cooperative projects? How do we build cooperation? How do we build cooperatives themselves, maybe, to enable to teach? And that could be through the voluntary sector, third sector, private, however it works, to impart that knowledge and support for people to create their own energy. And then there's about what council resources are there in order to contribute to it. So identifying sites, for example, where there might be able to be solar farms, using that to reduce the burden on the public purse, so then people have more of their own money in their pocket, or more money can be invested into reducing carbon across the local neighbourhoods and increasing the benefits of better air quality, etc. So for me, it's about how do you empower residents through that knowledge. Yes, there is, I suppose, part of my point about the co-location was that if you have your climate change awareness alongside your library service and your other services, then people who wouldn't normally see it are coming into those services. There is that level, but it's going beyond that and saying how can the council play a pivotal role in boosting our local economy through helping people and facilitating people to reduce their energy bills, and also the council itself.
Thank you. Okay, I've got quite a number of questions here about HS2, which you're kind of trying to move on to at this point. One is from Mark from West Drayton, who's posing this question on behalf of his daughter. HS2 Limited had just applied for a route-wide injunction that will include many private properties in Hillingdon, without even telling those residents involved. It also involves expansive tracts of land within Hillingdon that are not within the Act. Is this just? Is this an appropriate reaction to what has always been peaceful protest? Should the council be involved in alerting and advising all citizens of Hillingdon what this injunction would mean should HS2's application be successful? And can I ask Stuart to start this time as well, please?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, firstly, we're opposed to HS2. I know that's not the answer when it's already bulldozing down and contaminating and ruining large parts of our borough. Our hands are tied as a council in a lot of things. However, I do believe personally that an approach that could start to challenge the government, just as we've challenged as a council the expansion of Heathrow Airport, is needed. And actually, how the council could legally or even how practically it could start to put more pressure on the government, use its influence. I mean, I'm disappointed at the lack of influence that Hillingdon Council under Conservative administration has managed to put under a Conservative government, but I will leave that there. So it's what influence we have, using that as much as possible, pan-London influence as well. But then also, you know, what other mechanisms there are. And I'll be very honest, that I am not a legal expert. And I know there are many people here who are well versed in HS2 in terms of its legalities, etc. So I'd want to be using the council resource more to challenge the destruction of our borough.
Thank you. Sarah?
Well, that was great to hear Stuart saying that, because all of the other parties, Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrats, keep supporting HS2 and keep saying their hands are tied. Well, this is ridiculous. The route-wide injunction is an absolute affront to our civil liberties. What they've done, they've taken the whole of Park Lodge Farm, which goes right their way up to Harefield Village, and they've included it in an injunction, the penalty for which is they could take your assets and you could be put in prison for 2 years if you break an injunction. They're very, very serious things. You know, this should not be happening. The council should be immediately going to that court case and saying huge numbers of people in Hillingdon are being put at risk of breaking an injunction, and this injunction should not be placed on this land. You know, it's a very unpopular project, and they shouldn't just be going around trying to imprison people who are standing up against it. It's absolutely wrong. And the council must be much more proactive in this. The real thing that is happening is the council has somehow transferred vast swathes of land outside of the HS2 Act to HS2 Limited. Now, why don't the public know about this? You know, I've been watching each of the major planning applications, which the public are not allowed to be involved in. And each time, the first thing that the legal representatives, the council, say, our hands are tied. Well, our hands are not tied. No one's hands are tied when our water is being deteriorated. It's absolutely illegal to deteriorate a water source under any circumstances, and it's against the Hillingdon plan. the councillors need to stand up and the legal representatives need to put in an action against that injunction at that court case.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
I am a legal expert. I'm a barrister. I have read the skeleton argument and various other documents involved in the HS2 injunction application. Whilst I disagree with HS2 in general and in the way that it's been it's the way it's behaved both locally and nationally, I don't think that I can agree that it's putting people in danger on their own land. Their land is subject to either leases already taken out or compulsory purchase powers. So it's unfortunate that we are being asked to comment on a long question that has various assumptions within it, without which to an extent detracts from the very real issues that Sarah's identified that HS2 has on the impacts that it has on local community. Various other noise issues. I live in Ickenham. My daily travel includes passing through up Breakspear Road, increase in pollution, noise pollution, the lorries. It is a very real threat to our local environment, and there are numerous things that we can object to with respect to the questioner, without exaggerating the impact and of what is a fairly discrete legal issue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next question is from Alan, who hasn't listed his council, but he asks, what cleanup operations do you envisage of the New Year's Green landfill site, given that the pollution from the site is presently contaminating the Colne Valley chalk aquifer, mainly due to HS2 operations? Sorry, I should choose who should go.
I can go first on that if you like.
Sure.
I know the facts.
I'm trying to mix it up.
Yeah. Okay, well, the chalk aquifer under the Colne Valley produces a huge amount of our drinking water. There is one section that is already polluted, and it's been polluted since the 1970s from a very, very large landfill site called New Year's Green, which took huge amounts of London waste. Now, the borough inherited that pollution, but they also took on a commitment that they would remediate it and they would stop the pollution pathways that are going into the Ickenham source. The Ickenham source has been closed since 1997 because it's polluted, but it's meant to be remediated. That's because we're short of water. We don't have a lot of drinking water. So we have several really good sources and one which is already closed. The fear is, with all that pile driving for that aquifer right the way across the valley, starting in the polluted source, that the pollution will spread across. And this question has never been answered, how they're going to stop that pollution spreading across. HS2, when it's been brought up, they say, oh, we're not drilling in polluted land. Well, they've already found pollution at the southern embankment. The borehole records show there's pollution there. They don't know how they're going to contain it. And the thing that's come up with this route-wide injunction is that the contaminated land is now included in the injunction. HS2 are saying that they have taken ownership of that contaminated land. Well, where are the plans to remediate it? Where are the plans to protect our water? The council have to take a role. You know, the council has a policy. The council has a policy which I mentioned at the beginning, Environmental Impact Policy 11, which says any development in the borough must do a risk assessment and must show how our groundwater, which is our drinking water, can be protected throughout the construction and running of something like this railway.
Thank you, Sarah.
It's not happening.
Thank you. Stuart.
I mean, I have to be honest and say there are sometimes I don't know the answers. I think that's very fair. The council has a significant resource of experts, and if they don't have them, then I believe that they need to be found. You know, if it's a problem in which the council has to respond, and there is the policy in place, we need to have our planners and legal experts within the council really holding HS2 to account to make sure that, because they are developing, where there is harm, it is remediated. It is something that isn't left to us after this project finishes. But there's often a number of nuances that I don't know as a councillor. And as a group, we would look to the knowledge within us and experts without. So for me, I don't know enough about that. I know quite a bit about it, but I don't know enough about it to be able to say this is the solution. But when you work with residents, when you open yourself up to this sort of accountability in Hustings or when you're knocking on doors, you very much realise that when you're working with residents, when you're working with communities, the answers can come through, the angles can come through, the learning can come through to elected members. So for me, it's about that principle that the Hillingdon Labour has, where you work with residents, work with groups to really look at what are the options, and then you work with council officers and experts to make sure that we're, as far as possible, you can take as much action as possible.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Alex?
Yeah, the role of the council in this should be to be as vociferous in representing the local people as it can be. The Hillingdon Council has a huge amount of influence and should be using that to sway the decision makers in this. It's obviously unfortunate that the council is not the decision maker in relation to either HS2 or the water situation. The Environment Agency is, and then there's government governed by statute and by the HS2 governing committee. But this is an issue that has a tremendous impact on local residents. The chalk aquifer provides water to about 3.2 million people. And once there is pollution, it is tremendously difficult to clean that. And I'm not a geologist, but my understanding is that chalk aquifers are amongst the most difficult of those to clean because of the way that the pollution passes through those rocks. And I'm aware that this has been an issue locally since 1995, and it just beggars belief that we are still just talking about it. This isn't an HS2 issue on its own. It's not an issue for Hillingdon on its own. It's an issue for 1/20 of the UK's population, and it does require and it does deserve a proper response, a full-on response from the Hillingdon. It's been sorely lacking, and it's certainly something that, if elected, I would be making my voice known, and trying to work with anybody else who wanted to amplify that.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, the next question is from Shahzad from Hillingdon West, who asks, how would you challenge or influence the government to invest properly in the green energy, and reduce the fossil fuel projects in and outside the UK? So how would you challenge or influence the government to invest properly? Can I ask Stuart to address that first, please?
I think firstly, you start with the buying power of local authorities. Hillingdon has significant buying power, and by making sure that it's investing properly, or its investments and pensions are investing properly. Our pension scheme isn't entirely within our control. It's done with multiple groups and authorities. There is a number of across London purchasing done through different mechanisms from London Council. So I think you set the example first. You put the policies in place locally. That means that you're able to invest in the right things and divest in the wrong things, particularly around climate change, which is, we have to play our part, because it doesn't matter if you have a perfect borough. If you're then investing in the most ridiculous fossil fuels all over the world, it doesn't resolve the issue. So for me, it's about setting that example locally. There's also the aspect for me about how do we use our influence politically. I mean, this government seems to listen as infrequently and ignore and be as arrogant as the Hillingdon Conservatives appear to be. And so I don't hold much faith in that. That doesn't stop us fighting at every moment for what is right. So you use your buying power as a council first, you build it into the partnerships and networks that you have. And then, it's about being a strong voice out there and making sure that you're placing yourself around the table to keep reminding those national, regional and other local governments about the importance of getting these things right.
Thank you, Stuart. Alex?
Unfortunately, I think this is one of those questions where the answer is we really can't do very much. It's national policy that needs to change, national policy within the regulation of the entire energy market, national policy on the use of incentives. We're not allowed to say subsidies, but I mean the government has invested something, or has allocated something like £175 million to renewable energy and storage nationally. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's not in terms of the amount of money that it's necessary to develop, encourage, and deliver alternative energy systems. So, as locally, there's not a lot the council can do in terms of energy generation, alternative energy generation. We can do things at the other end, and that locally, that's what I would be seeking to do, improve amongst other things, the use of or the efficiency of the use of energy within our residences. That's a huge waste of energy through which we can change by increasing the requirements on planning for new builds, for renovations, and by providing assistance for people renovating their houses to bring them up to proper insulation, so that that one issue alone could reduce the borough's environmental impact massively, and we can deal with energy use in that way.
Thank you. Sarah?
Well, I agreed with some things that you both said. First of all, that locally we can do a lot with investments and divestments. But the thing is, we need to know the truth. And I also agree that the best way to change the government's opinion is to vote them out. You said the thing about 175 million in renewable and storage. Even that isn't being spent properly. We spend £2 million a day on drugs. That is our money going into a project which is ecocidal. It's actually deforestating the world, and trees don't grow that fast, and the whole biosphere depends on them. We can't be making investments like that, but it all goes on the narrative, what you believe, where you hear your news, and that's why we do need a place where people could go and talk. I think there's a lot of agreement with everyone here, and if we had enough time we could talk, and we could actually come up with actual actions, and that's what people need. It is everyone together to stop investing in fossil fuels and start actually doing actions in our everyday lives and communicating and telling the truth. So there is a way forward, but we have to be pretty quick about it now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. The next question is from Pippa from Colham and Cowley, and she asks, how do you feel about the Nationality and Borders Bill, and what are you doing to address migrant justice? Can I ask Alex to address that first?
I think what do I feel about the Nationality and Borders Bill? I presume that there's a particular part of the bill that's being identified there, but I'm afraid I don't know what that is. Migrant justice is again a loaded term. It may mean different things to different people. You've heard me speak already about issues relating to the manufacture of electric cars and the batteries, which lead to environmental degradation elsewhere. We're transmitting the pollution to China, developing nations in Africa, rather than having it here. I am extremely aware of the impact that the developed nation, particularly Britain, particularly England within that historically, has had on the world. We've taken a lot, and it is my general view that we have a lot we can give back, and therefore a lot we should give back. I have been a committed internationalist for my entire life. I was born abroad, and I really am not a general fan of borders. It's a very long topic to go over, but migrant justice. We have refugees coming. We have economic migrants coming. We owe it to the world in general to be as open to all comers as we can. And the general drive has always been that they've benefited this country. And I can't see any reason for that to change.
Thank you, Alex. Sarah?
Well, it's one of the most appalling pieces of legislation that is going through the Parliament at this moment. The Green Party peers are really standing up against it and putting in amendments, and many of the other peers are joining them. So it's not having an easy ride through, but the size of the majority of the Conservative Party probably means it will penalise the most vulnerable people more and more. The whole thing that they put forward about sending people to Rwanda is absolutely appalling. I don't know how we can hold our heads up as a country when we're proposing doing that to people. Rwanda has its own problems and has many civil rights difficulties going on. It's one of the countries you can't be gay, for instance. You can't, abortion is illegal. There is all sorts of corruption. You know, we just shouldn't even be contemplating it. And yet our political system at the moment is allowing this sort of bill to go all the way through to law. And it's completely wrong. Personally, I've been on one march about it and signed petitions, but I need to do more. Yeah, it's wrong.
Thank you, Sarah. Stuart?
Thank you. In my day job, I have the pleasure of working with asylum seekers. Hillingdon is a port authority. We have a high number of migrants, refugees, asylum seekers in our diverse and beautiful borough. I think my sadness in Hillingdon is the lack of welcome that's received. And that lack of welcome isn't from residents who open their homes, who concentrate on being part of a community and a neighbourhood, but it's a resistance from a Conservative-run administration that doesn't want to show any generosity or any welcome, particularly to asylum seekers, through fear of cost. We put forward a motion last year or the year before, I forget, excuse me, about having more funding for asylum seekers support. And the Conservatives quickly voted it down. And that was mainly about lobbying for more funding for Hillingdon. It does two things. It supports refugees and asylum seekers who many are in destitution, who need support, where the national system is falling short. It helps build cohesion in our neighbourhoods. But it also means that residents of Hillingdon aren't having to foot more of the bill for being a port authority. The airport does bring a lot, but it also brings a lot of costs. And the government should be stepping forward and funding adequately support for asylum seekers and refugees, and they fail. And Hillingdon should be doing more to use its voice to influence and draw in funding, particularly around this area locally.
Thank you so much. I'm very conscious of the time now, so I'm going to, one of the next questions are around planning and open spaces. So hopefully the people who've put forward some of these questions will appreciate that I'm generalising to some extent, but a question from Rosemary from Ickenham and South Harefield, who ask, how will you safeguard the borough's allotments and make sure all plots are occupied, together with Norette's question, which is about how would you protect all open spaces from developers, especially south of the borough? So I suppose one's about green spaces and one's about generally, open spaces and development in the area. Can I start with Sarah?
Hi. Well, allotments were already being lost in Ickenham, between Ickenham and Risley, because of HS2. Agricultural land, huge amounts are being lost in the north of the borough. I think that with the climate crisis and ecological breakdown that is racing away around us, we're going to be facing food shortages. And we've got to start seriously looking at ways that we can increase growing fruit and vegetables and local things, mushrooms even, locally. And it would be great to have groups that do that. There's places that I've looked at where they've got things called agri hubs, where local community come together and they have experts and they have a certain amount of input, but they grow huge amounts of food. We're a temperate climate. We've got lots and lots of expertise in this area all around us, and yet we don't even think about being smallholders or growing things to eat because we're so busy, and and we think, oh well, there's supermarkets over there, but no, things are going to change so rapidly. We've got to start thinking about this, and the one thing is space. Hillingdon is in some ways fortunate because we do have open spaces, but we have to think very carefully how we're going to allow them to be developed. We should safeguard the allotments that we have, and we should increase the size, because the waiting lists for allotments are getting longer and longer, because many people with this cost of living crisis are looking to grow food. And we could have clubs, we could have trainings, we could have all sorts of things, because it's easy to grow seeds and then you've got too many of one thing. And there could be seed swaps, there could be all sorts of things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can do.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes, it's unfortunate that we have such waiting lists for allotments. It's a tremendous resource for a number of reasons. One of the things that I do outside of politics, I work in mental health issues, and having not just a green space to be in, but a green space to work with, to watch grow, is tremendously beneficial for people's mental health. I think it would have been of great use during the COVID lockdown for us to have individual areas where we could have been out and doing those things. National Allotment Week is in August. That it would be something that I would want the council to promote. It should be in the council's health and well-being plan. As I say, that it's important to centre allotments as a part of the community, because that's what they are. They're not just they're not just for growing food, although they're obviously for growing food. They're growing, they're growing flowers. For those things are, I've seen, contributing to local events, to fetes, and one would expect to see locally grown food in the celebrations coming for the Queen's Jubilee. And again, as Sarah spoke about, supporting with lessons people to how to grow, what to propagate, to exchange seeds and ideas. It's a small thing, potentially, that can blossom and grow, sorry for the puns, into something much greater for the community and for our mental health.
Thank you. Stuart?
And firstly, one of our key pledges in this campaign is to not build on greenbelt or open space land that's protected by a covenant. That's an absolute no-no for Hillingdon Labour. In terms of the allotments, this is a systemic problem for me with this Conservative administration. There is a managed decline of all services. There is a lack of support for residents to be able to engage with and to enjoy certain aspects of what the council provides, because there isn't the staff or resource behind it. There's been a managed decline in our libraries, in our waste services, where we no longer get free bulky waste collections, and fabric recycling has changed. There's been a managed decline of our youth services, children's services, the list goes on. And this is all at the same time as the Conservatives creating a £38 million deficit in the higher needs education budget, which is now going to cost each household around £200. And I think that may sound small numbers, but that's after a bailout, to still have £200 of cuts per household, cuts that we've already seen because of their pipe dream projects on museums and theatres, which thankfully Hillingdon Labour have managed to oppose, and common sense has come about. We do want arts and culture and things, but not at the cost of hundreds of millions of pounds of borrowings. That means cuts to local services. And I fear, sadly, like all services in Hillingdon at the moment, that the allotment service has been cut to the bone as well. And so it looks good on paper, but actually when people need the services, when they need the support, when plots need to be properly managed, the Conservatives haven't resourced it. And so we sadly see them go into managed decline.
Thank you, Stuart. So we're coming up to 8:15, which is coming towards the end of our session this evening. So it's an opportunity for each of the panelists to have a few minutes to make a closing statement. I do, however, also notice that Alistair Fisher, who's a candidate for the National Health Action Party, has joined us. So if possible, I think it might be useful to give him also an opportunity to speak for a couple of minutes as well. But to kick us off for those closing statements, can we start with Sarah Green from the Green Party?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity of being on this panel, even though we don't have a Green councillor on the local authority at the moment. Local authorities are custodians of our environment, and we need green voices to keep everyone else on track, to bring out all their wonderful green ideas. But we also need a green voice to make sure these ideas get put into action. You know, we are surrounded by possible annihilation of humanity. It's huge. We have to take action, and we have to encourage each other that action is possible. All I can say is that in the north of the borough, we've been trying so hard, and we have been researching. We do know what is needed. And if we could get people actually elected in Harefield Village and Ickenham and South Harefield, we would contribute to the other parties, we would contribute all of our ideas, and we would work collectively and positively to find solutions that would help Hillingdon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
I think you've heard quite a bit from me, really. We're not Liberal Democrats are not just about the environment, but the environment is central to our position locally and nationally. I could bang on for hours about energy generation, transmission and loss, so I shan't bore you with any more of that. I would say that it is important for the council to be encouraged, whether we are in power, whether we have a seat at the table or whether we're outsiders. It's important for the council to be encouraged by all of us to listen to the individual voices from around the borough, not just the north where I am, but from the south, where the needs are different, but we can all benefit from listening to each other and putting our voices forward collectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Stuart.
Thank you. And I do appreciate and have enjoyed listening to everyone here, and we do learn as we work together, and I do believe that. And that's exactly what Hillingdon Labour is about for me. It's about working with residents from across the borough. We are a party that has been out and about, and we continue to listen, and we are ready to govern. We are in many areas the only option that can beat the Conservatives. And I would ask people to really think carefully before they vote about how we can get rid of a Conservative administration that doesn't care, that's unambitious, and really just does the basics when it comes to climate change and other green issues. And I think for me, the important thing is to have a local authority that supports local residents, that is financially stable, which the Conservative administration has shown they have not, which is looking out for our elderly, which is challenging antisocial behaviour, which is protecting our free weekly bin waste and recycling collections, to have a council that works with its residents. And that's what Hillingdon Labour is all about.
Thank you. And if I could ask Alistair if he would like to take up this opportunity to say a few words. I understand he's been bumped up to join the panel. You're not obliged to, but if you'd like to, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just put on my video. Am I still there? I look as though I've disappeared.
You've disappeared.
I'd better
I
just.
still hear you.
Well, I've I've got a bit dark. Oh, there I am. I have got to go a lot closer. I also think I've got COVID at the moment, and I caught it probably at the council meeting where I asked if I could be, ask other people to be masked, and that request was ignored by the council. And I'm sorry about that. Look, I will just go and put a light on, otherwise you just won't see me.
Okay. Well, we've only got a few minutes, so
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Marvelous.
Sorry about that. Right. So let me say first of all that I don't believe in standing against either Green, Liberal Democrat, or Labour councillors where the result would split the vote. And I live in West Drayton, and it's a very close call. The place has been inundated with Tories and even quite a few Labour people. Because it's close, they decided that the Tories have decided that they are going to go full throttle for it. But they're not doing much in the Colum and Cowley electorate because it's pretty clear that they're going to win there. And Labour, I don't think, have got any real chance, unless, of course, there is such a big swing, such a huge swing, that it's not going to matter anyway, that if Labour do happen to win, I'm not going to be the one who stops them. I've got a particular voting strategy which says, vote for me, because it's the only way you're able to keep the NHS. But if you vote Tory, then leave your third vote for me. If you vote Labour, leave your third vote for me. If you vote Green, leave your third vote for me. And and there's no skin off one of those two parties other than the Tories. No skin at all off their nose to give me their third vote if they can't win themselves. And
Okay.
even if they do win, do the unusual thing of winning, and I saw no evidence of that at all. Once I've been door knocking, that the Labor were pretty certainly not going to win that seat. I might say that I have good green credentials, and that I believe that even the tiniest of changes can in weather can make a huge difference to our survival as humans on Earth.
Okay.
And,
thank you. I think we've run out of time there. We've kept everyone on quite a time.
Thank you for letting me in anyway. I'm pleased that I got a voice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, the other three, for listening to me.
Okay, so I think we've had a fantastic opportunity to hear and cover quite a lot of issues here. I know a lot of them surrounded the climate emergency, but after all of that, we can't do something about that, then nothing else is ultimately going to matter very much. It's been a fantastic opportunity to hear the various points of view, and it's clear that there's a strong, well, from my perspective, there's a strong sense and people want to collectively work with each other, that to cross party lines to ensure that some of the changes that you've talked about and hope to do within the local community can actually happen. And I hope you'll think also about Brunel and how Brunel University might also play a part in enabling activities and community engagement to assist in the achievement of some of the goals that you have. Really appreciate everyone's efforts, and would like to thank again Debbie and Tony for all the work they've put in bringing these spokespersons together. And as I say, it's a great disappointment that we don't also have a Conservative person here to respond to a lot of the issues that are animating local people. I'm sorry we weren't able to cover all the questions that were put forward. There was an enormous list, and in order to really allow spokespeople to address them effectively, we've had to not cover all of them, but I hope that there'll be further opportunities for you to engage with these local spokespeople to get your questions answered. I think that's everything from me at this point. I don't know if anyone else has anything final to say on these things.
I just want to say thank you very much to everybody for listening to me to the extent they did. And there's a point at which whether or not you vote for me, I just want you to get out and vote. It's important.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mary. Wonderful chairing, and we should do this again.
Absolutely. So, yes, use your vote.
Thank you all very much. And yes, I can't echo any more than just please get out and vote, and encourage those who haven't voted before to do the same.
Thank you so much, and have a lovely evening. All the very best.